So we're coming to look again, Message of Hope, third week of looking at this whole theme of Reformation. We've done all sorts of things over this year, some more Bible-based, but this is more historical, church history, looking at those intriguing different scenarios that challenge us as churches, as Christians, as Jesus people, to walk a path in our culture, society today, and make Jesus look good. I hope you really enjoyed Gordon yesterday, looking at that pathway of missions and how that has changed. Well, today I want to talk about the 3 C's of change. Not the C's as in oceans, but the C's as in the K of change. And I want us to just think about, what does change look like? The first week we looked all at technology, and I think a bit overwhelmed, absurd. And then we looked at the cultural shifts that actually technology, printing press, etc. brought. Last week we looked at the church that prays, children, legacies, generation. We looked at how the printing press actually helped us in that journey and made information accessible from the few to the many, to both young and old, to rich and less privileged. We considered how social media, internet, and all these forms of communication that are emerging actually should not threaten us, but become tools in our hands. So how are we? Do we have to connect with this era of robots, AI, electric cars? Will the church have a grid from which we can help and serve our communities? Then last week we looked at education, children, and missions. How can we connect, share Jesus with this next generation? What will missions look like? Yesterday, Gordon did give us that incredible overview of missions and use that word again, apostolic teams, and what do they look like today? So I wonder what it looks like to you. So what are these cultural shifts? You see, I believe the church shouldn't be ever compromise its message, but does need to adapt its methods. And so we live in Oxford. Gordon and I have lived here now for over 15 years. And my ministry, when I moved into Oxford, was called Heart Cry. But actually, once I lived and began to root into the city of Oxford, a Reformation city, in fact, of the last centuries, I began to feel even a shift coming to my ministry. I felt that I wasn't just a heart cry of a prophetic call to prayer, but actually I wanted to see my prayers influence my tomorrow. And so, as you all know now, my ministry is called Heart Cry for Change. You see, before moving to Oxford, my ministry had been mainly a teaching and a prayer ministry. But I felt God begin to challenge me, as I shared last week, about going in and out, that I needed to look beyond the prayers and begin sculpturing and writing the new pathways of change. I felt, come on, don't just pray for change, but begin to be a vehicle of change. Be entrepreneurial. Begin to write that history. Begin to write his story. So Heart Cry for Change was born, and we like to say Heart Cry for Change is a prophetic voice with a compassionate heart. And you see, it was when I was praying about Heart Cry and prayer and feeling this missional pressure, come on Rachel, look at your landscape, that I felt God say to me, Rachel, you are to be Heart Cry for Change, and change always needs a 3-way connection in society. God said to me, you know, the church just spiritually praying behind its doors, isolated, will never bring the full transformational societal change that we want to see. Church was never created to be an island. It was created to be totally integrated with the community and the commerce, so that the wealth, the people, and the leadership of the church all flow and work together to provide great dwelling places and spaces to make Jesus look good. So what are these 3 C's? I believe if we're really going to partner together to see change, we need to see the C of the church, the C of our community, and the C of commerce and business, all connected together to bring change. You see, when we look at these different C's, we're most probably, as Christians, most familiar with the church. In fact, my mum, Eileen Vincent, spoke the week before last about the church, about its role of shifting culture and transformation. And in recent years, we've become more familiar with that C of community. You know, we've begun to realise that as churches, we need to reach out and be good neighbours. We need to connect and show love and kindness to those around us. There has been a much more missional thrust in our church ethos and culture. The church and the community have begun to connect. And so, as Gordon spoke yesterday about these apostolic movements of mission, what do we mean? For some of you, maybe this language is a bit strange, but that word apostolic is actually quite a simple word. We often think of the 12 apostles around the table, that sort of picture, but that word apostolic literally means the sent ones. And I believe that God is sending us as a movement of people that know we have been sent out to affect our society, community, and people around us. We often have different passions and purposes. Some of us reach the poor, and we have seen the growth of night shelters, outreach towards the homeless, food banks, and caring for those who need help. Others of us have really felt we need to be those who bring deliverance and break the chains, and so we minister to those with addictions. We've seen Battelle, who you know I've spoken about, rise up, and other organisations who are specially crafted to minister to those with drug, alcohol, pornography, gambling and other addictions, and help them break the chains. Others are more on the social welfare, building homes, low economy homes, or caring for children and youth in their own homes and becoming foster parents. We've seen the growth of Eden projects out of the Message Trust in Manchester, where people literally move into communities and provide a homely environment where people can come into homes, feel care, feel love, feel family care. Other people, you have the ability with money. And so, excuse me, I think it's the flowers are making me sneeze. And so others are called to deal with the debts and financial challenges. So we've seen the growth of Christians Against Poverty, those who are coming alongside. All through Britain, we're seeing the setting up of these missional hubs, or as Gordon used, apostolic movements of sent ones with definite specific messages who are going against slavery, against addiction, against poverty, against debt, and breaking the chains of our culture and society. There is an army of incredible people that are bringing hope. And I tell you, I feel proud so often as I listen to the stories of what God is doing in our churches and community, and how the church and the community have connected in the last 20 years in a much more realistic way. But I believe that if we're really going to see the momentum of change and reformation that we want, then we need to see this next C of commerce and business connecting in with the church and the community too. Because I mean, how many of you have got a vision that needs money? And how many of you do not have the money to fulfill the vision? Most of us. Most of us, our limitation is financial. And so I believe God wants to bring together businessmen, community and church together to start to put our heads together to really bring shift in culture. We read in Luke chapter 8 verse 3 that Johanna, the wife of Cusa, was the manager of Herod's household, and Susanna and many others went with Jesus, and these women were helping support them out of their own means. And you see, here were wealthy people who were obviously influencers. They were actually the high end of the culture and society, and they had money. But they were connected into the community, into Jesus, and together that got the mission on the road. Often, if we examine ourselves and church structures, we're often cautious of people with means and wealth because often they have influence. And so the church has been very hesitant to connecting with good alignments with those people who have business expertise, wealth. We often are a bit suspicious of their help, wondering if there's too many strings attached. But I believe that God really wants us to build with the builders in the business place. We need their wisdom. We need their experience. We need their influence to help us knock and open on the doors that are going to bring the transformation and reformation. You see, if you look back at times of Reformation, you often see these philanthropic hearts which gave for the poor, provided work, schools, medical centres and homes. And actually, much of this history is under scrutiny at the moment. And we are uncomfortable with some of the bridges that were built into our cities. And some of this caution is correct. But I want to say, come on, let's not just close our hearts to the need that we have for entrepreneurial business practices to work with us in the church and communities. I believe we need whole new partnerships to evolve. Sue Rinaldi used that word evolution, and some of us only think of that in the terms of school and Darwinism, and so we feel uncomfortable using that in a church context. And so we've tended to use the word more reformation or revolution, but I do believe we need a cultural evolution. What is evolution? It's actually an adaptation and change, and we need to constantly adapt and look at smarter ways to use our skills to build the bridges of hope so that we can craft the new eras of philanthropic banking, mortgaging, helping. CAP has been wonderful, but we need so much more to reverse the curses in our community. Come on, think of Ruth and Boaz, that incredible book of Ruth. Here was a young widow who would be a migrant, who'd lost everything, whose land was in famine and disaster, who met up with Naomi, and she found a partnership for redemption. And so, first of all, she partnered with Naomi, who taught her wisdom. Then she met Boaz, and Boaz was a wealthy man. He was an influencer, and it was because Ruth and Boaz got together that their future was unlocked. We read in Ruth chapter 4, verse 9. Then Boaz announced to the elders of the city and all the people, "Today you are my witnesses. I have bought Naomi and all the property of Elimelech, Kilion and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth, the prophetess, as the Moabitess, as my wife. And in order to maintain the name of the dead and the property, so his name won't disappear, this is your testament. You are my witnesses." Here's a wealthy man. He just bought out all the lands of Naomi and her husband, Ruth's husband, etc. And there began, because of that partnership of a man of means and wealth with a migrant poor worker, suddenly legacy and generations, a redemption of a partnership. And here, that legacy even unlocked the bloodline of Jesus. This widow, this foreigner, this migrant found a very rich, influential man. She'd lost everything, but now suddenly her spiritual legacy, directed by Naomi, with her work in the community, connected to a businessman, and she found a legacy for life. I want to ask you, what are the new philanthropic partnerships that we need to see? What are the different prejudices we need to break towards money and business? I believe that God is going to bring people from every tribe and tongue, people from across the world and nations, and they're going to come and influence and connect with us. I see different nations with different graces, different skill sets and abilities, and even different ways that churches work with business. I believe we need to get ready because we are one nation under God. And every tongue, every tribe, every nation is going to come. Come on, I believe in this future, these seas of church, community and commerce are going to work together to find a whole new grace to work with business and the wealthy. Come on, let's stop being afraid of money and those with a gift of business. The church should be a safe place for them. These are new days. You ready to pray for me? Helen's going to look at this whole thing of the sculpture and tapestry of nations. And then later this week, we've got Duncan Vincent, who's going to talk to us about business. But ask God to stir your heart. So Father, today we ask you, touch our hearts. Break any prejudice that we have towards the business community and people of influence. And I pray you take those 3 C's, connect us together to make Jesus look good in our land at this time. And everybody said, Amen. God really bless you.